Hi, this is Bob Hatton. This is The Encourager. It's very good that you've joined us today because I think we're going to speak about something which is very important. I'm just missing out some of the conversations and talks and questions that Jesus had in the temple in Jerusalem, and we're going to go to chapter 13. And in chapter 13, Jesus leaves the temple together with his disciples, and actually he'd never ever return to the temple again. They're making their way up to the Garden of Gethsemane and to the Mount of Olives. But as they're leaving, the disciples, they are so amazed at this building. I mean, it was a beautiful building, and say, look at the size of those stones. And the Jewish Roman historian Josephus Flavius, he tells us that these stones, that they were 11, some of them, not all of them, but some of them were 11 meters long, 5.5 meters wide, and 3.5 meters high. That is quite something. They were very, very big. And we know that the temple in Jerusalem belonged to one of the world wonders of that age. But you know, so I think it was justified that they were very impressed with this building. But you know, Jesus, when he looks at them, he says, "Do you see these great buildings? There will not be left here one stone upon the other that will not be thrown down." His talks with the leaders of the Jewish nation hadn't gone well. They were so stubborn, and they rejected him. They hardened their hearts. And just in a few days after this, they were going to crucify him. They were going to kill the Son of God. And not just kill him, but torture him and kill him in such a terrible way. But yeah. And this couldn't go without any consequences. And actually, less than 40 years later, this word, what Jesus just said, this prophecy, it was fulfilled. And I think about 68 AD, there was an uprising in Jerusalem. The Jews rebelled against the Romans, and they sent an army under the leadership of a man called Titus, who was later going to be the emperor. And Titus, he put the city under siege, and it took about 2 years, and then they captured the town, they razed it to the ground, the temple was destroyed and plundered, and Josephus later, he wrote that any visitors going to Jerusalem would never imagine that anybody had ever lived there before. And the temple was destroyed, about 1 million Jews were slaughtered, and those who survived were carried away into captivity. After the temple had been destroyed, the Romans built a temple to Jupiter, and there they practiced their idol worship. This was more than a surprise. This was a shock. When Jesus arrived in the Garden of Gethsemane, Peter and John and James and also Andrew, they asked him if he could elaborate on what he'd said. You know, what does that mean? And Jesus explained that his kingdom had come, but it wasn't there in its fullness. I suppose that's why Jesus told us that, you know, pray the Lord's Prayer, our Father who in heaven. And he says, don't forget to pray, your kingdom come, your kingdom come. And so Christians all over the world, they pray this prayer, your kingdom come, because the kingdom still hasn't come in fullness. And between the ascension of Jesus and his return, his coming again, his second advent, there's going to be a number of things that would happen. And Jesus tells us here, he says there's going to be some trials, and there's going to be conflict, and it's going to, you know, don't get too upset about this. There's going to be things that's going to be happening. False Christs are going to rise up, false messiahs are going to come with a false message and try to deceive people. There are going to be wars. There are going to be natural disasters. There will be famines. And when we read Luke, he complements this list and says there'll be revolutions, and there'll be diseases, plagues in various places. And as we read this, we get the impression that that this is the news that we're hearing day by day. But he says, please don't get too excited. Don't get too worried, because this is like a woman bringing a child to birth. This is just the beginning of the labor pains. Other things are going to happen, and one of the other things that are going to happen, the gospel is going to go out to every single nation. That means every single people's group in this world. Now, it shouldn't surprise us too much that just as the world hated Jesus, they will also hate us, his followers. And through the church history of the last 2,000 years, we've seen this in quite a number of ways. There has been, on the one side, there has been persecution, and there has been resistance to the gospel. On the other side, there's been an embracing and a dynamic growth and spreading of the Christian message up into our day. Just yesterday here in Germany, it was the 9th of November yesterday, and the 9th of November is a special date. It was the day when the German emperor abdicated in 1918. It was the day when Hitler made an attempted coup and tried to get onto to power in about, I don't know when that was, maybe 1921, 1922. And then in 1938, of course, it was what we now call the Reichspogromnacht. That's when all the synagogues and the Jewish people came under very, very strong persecution. And then, of course, something more better, in the 9th of November 1989, the wall that separated East and West Germany came down. So it's a very significant date, this 9th of November. And yesterday, people were called to pray for the 260 million Christians who are suffering from persecution, from religious persecution right now in our days. But when we look around the world, and we see countries like Iran or China, where persecution is quite strong against the Christians. The Christian church is growing like never before, and people are estimating that in China about 25,000 people are coming to Jesus every single day. And in Iran, where you can be executed for changing your religion, it's estimated that about 3 million people have become Christians in the last few years. No matter what the last numbers tell us, the Church of Jesus will continue to grow, as will persecution in different forms will also be with us. Because Jesus, he told us about these things. He knew these things were coming. He knows everything about us. He knows our life. And I want to tell you, he's going to keep you. His hand will be upon you. So don't despair, because Jesus is with you. Now, we're going to continue this theme tomorrow. And until then, I wish you God's blessings. I hope you have a good day, and God bless. Your Bob Hatton, your encourager.